Hi guys, welcome to our daily encounter. In 1 Samuel chapter 31, we see Saul falling on his sword. He's in the heat of battle with the Philistines, and he's wounded by an arrow, and he didn't want to be killed by the Philistines and to be abused by them, and so he actually asked his armor bearer to kill him, but the armor bearer was afraid, and so Saul falls on his sword and basically commits suicide. And it's interesting that Saul dies by his own hand. And this seems to be something that is according to God's direction. Time and time again, Saul could have been killed by another person's hand. We saw several times where David could have killed Saul, but he relented and he didn't kill Saul, even though he had the opportunity to. We also see even the Philistines here, even though they shot him with an arrow, and which could have killed him right away, he doesn't die right away. And then even the armor bearer, who was actually told by the king to kill him, was afraid and didn't kill him. So Saul ends up killing himself. So with all these different instances where Saul could have been killed by someone else, he actually ends up being killed by himself. And I think that this perhaps happened for a reason, because this gives us a great picture of those who live according to the flesh, those who live according to sin, and those who try to build their own kingdom. They typically will end up, in the long run, destroying themselves. Those who walk according to the Spirit might be killed by others. We see that even in scriptures with the apostles. We see, of course, Stephen, the martyr, being killed. We see James being killed. We also know historically that Paul was beheaded. Many of the apostles were killed for their faith. It's possible that a person living by the Spirit might be killed by somebody else. But those who walk according to the flesh destroy themselves. And that's the sad thing about walking according to the flesh, is it typically leads to one destroying themselves and leads ultimately to death. And of course, we could talk about the ultimate death that comes from separation from God and perhaps even eternal judgment. But even in this world, even in this life, we find that those who live according to themselves, who are selfish, those who are really just interested in building their own kingdom, those who are living in a very fleshly way, just living for the moment, they typically live a life that leads to their own destruction. We get a glimpse of this, or a picture of this, or instructions in connection to this in Romans chapter 8 and verse 6, where he says, "For the mind set on the flesh is death, but the mind set on the Spirit is life and peace." And he goes on to say in verse 12, "So then, brothers, we are under obligation not to the flesh to live according to the flesh." Verse 13, "For if you are living according to the flesh, you must die." And so here we see that the flesh leads to death. Living according to the flesh, living according to our own selfish desires, living to build up our own kingdom, will ultimately lead to our demise. Jesus said that those who love their lives will lose it. And that very well could be, and that does happen with those who want to just live for themselves. But those who live according to the Spirit, walk according to the Spirit, even though they die, they still live. Even though they might be killed by the hands of others, still they have their life restored to them through Jesus Christ unto eternal life. And so we ought to be encouraged to not live according to the flesh. If we live according to the flesh, we're going to end up just destroying ourselves in one way or the other. And we want to be those who walk according to the Spirit, who fix our minds on things above, where Christ is seated in the heavenly places, seeking the kingdom and his righteousness above everything else, living according to the precepts and the commandments of God, walking in his guidance and in his direction. That's the pathway to life. But again, living selfishly, living just according to our own animal desires and instincts will lead ultimately to our demise. And of course, we don't want to go that route. So let's be encouraged today to walk by the Spirit, to set our minds on things above, to fix our eyes on Christ, to love the Lord our God with all of our heart, soul, mind, and strength, to love our neighbor as ourselves, and to be outward focused, to not so much be living for ourselves, but living for the kingdom and living for the glory of God. And with that, I do thank you for watching the video today. Hope you guys have a great day. Love you guys. God bless.